Welcome to Between the Reps without Brooke, Jeanna and Devon. Brooke can't join us. She is traveling. So when she gets back, she'll fill us in on what fun things she's been doing.
She's on her way to Southern California to the CrossFit semifinals to cheer on a friend of hers.
Yeah, that's what I heard. And I'm so irritated with her because I was supposed to go.
Why?
I was going to go. And then I decided not to last minute because I was like, well, I've got the wedding next weekend. I've been going. I probably shouldn't just go and like just spend money for no reason. And then I find out she's going and I was like, asshole. I would have loved to have seen you. But yeah, it's just how it works out.
Well, I can tell you that it was super last minute.
I know she told me that, but yeah. I'm still going to pretend I'm mad at her.
Okay.
Yeah. Really pissed off.
Yeah, you're pissed off is most people's good side.
Am I just like,
you're the sweetest pissed off?
I am not the sweet. God damn it, I'm not sweet. My hairdresser, Moni, she always says that to me. Cause like I'll tell her about like things that have happened with, you know, like an ex or like one of the kids' moms or, like some awful story. And then I'll like end up defending them. And she's like, you're just too nice. I'm like, I'm not being nice. I'm just trying to be a good person.
Trying to look at it from all sides and angles.
I know. It comes from my mother. Yeah. She fucked me up.
I don't think being, fair and trying to look at things from both sides is necessarily fucked up. But
okay. Well, sometimes I just would love to be comfortable with being mean.
I know.
Because you're the same way, Devon.
I am.
You're the same way.
I talk a big game to like my friends and family and stuff, but when it comes to like confrontation, I'm like, so, this is how I feel.
This really hurt my feelings.
Oh, you don't care? Okay. You're right. Fuck me then. Bye.
It's called doormats.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's some good and some bad to it.
There are.
Yeah. But anyway, okay, guys. So we were I was talking to Devon yesterday and I watched this documentary, shocker, that really kind of hit me kind of hard. And so I was telling Devon, you watched it last night. Yeah,
I did. Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of wanted to talk about it. And it's definitely like a heavier subject. So if you're like, nah, I just want to laugh, then probably just turn it off now.
Yeah.
Because it is a really serious subject. And the documentary that we watched was called Victim. What's it called now?
Victim Suspect.
Victim Suspect. I was like, not Survivor. That's not right. Victim Suspect
on Netflix.
Yeah. And you just watched it last night. So do you want to kind of give a synopsis of it, or do you want me to do it, or?
No, I'm happy to do it. I do want to preface this conversation with my own like quick little disclaimer and feelings. This documentary dives into sexual assault victims and the process that they go through once they've reported it. And this particular documentary focuses on when victims are not believed and they're accused of filing a false police report and charged with that and subsequently sent to jail or, have to do probation. And the reporter looks at the process and the lack of processes for an education for law enforcement in these types of situations. And my little preface is that I have so much respect for law enforcement officers. I have friends and family that are in law enforcement, and I really do believe that the majority of people go into it to because it is it's you know a noble profession. It's something that they can do within their communities that will provide a living for their families. And I don't think that people go into it to try to do harm, at least most of them. I do think that there is something within the culture that shifts the mindset when you have a little bit of power. Um, but I do think that these men and women are thrown into situations with some basic academy training, and then they are, promoted or put into these situations, and there's a real lack of education and training on how they deal with those, particularly sexual assaults, because I did a little bit of Googling, and 73% of law enforcement officers in the United States, based on the data that I Googled, it could have changed by now, but are males. And so 80% of sexual assault victims are female. And so the what's the right word?
Well, there's a disconnect there, right?
Right. And the nuances of trying to um, interview a woman by a man in power, can be very tricky.
Well, and what I noticed in this is that, like you said, to interview, what they're doing is they're interrogating.
Yeah.
They're not interviewing the victim, they're interrogating the victim.
Mm-hmm.
They're using the same tactics as they would to interrogate, the person that, or the assailant.
Right. For whatever reason, lack of process, lack of education, lack of training. But I just wanted to kind of give that, because I don't think either of us are like anti
No,
enforcement or anti,
no.
But this particular documentary does sort of focus, as she researched what had happened in these cases, the system failed.
Right. And
it seems
like it's definitely in certain areas more so than others.
Mm-hmm.
So it differs state to state. So we're not saying it's, the entire country, but,
right.
but yeah, it's, I just felt like it was an important conversation because there were so many things that happened, in those interviews or interrogations that it's almost like I want to talk to my girls about it,
Mm-hmm.
my daughters about it, because I think they were saying something about I think mainly most of the victims are between the ages of what, like 14 and 26.
Yeah,
Like that.
it was, hold on, I took a screenshot of it.
Yeah, I think most of the reports, it was something like that, like between 14 and 26. These are really young girls, naive, there's a naivete to them.
Right. Very, very immature,
Right.
unable to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. And advocate for themselves.
Right.
And they've been traumatized.
Exactly.
So you add that into it and they don't know what the hell's going on. They're just asking for help. And I feel like it takes so much bravery to even get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Even go in and to admit this is what was done to me, and I have to deal with that whole process. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever talked about this on here, but it had something similar happened to me, and it was the first time I'd ever had sex, which was even, I don't know if that's worse. It's all bad. Mm-hmm. And I had passed out I had just broken up with my boyfriend. I had found out that he was having sex with somebody else and I wasn't having sex with him. Mm-hmm. And Uh, and he was not okay with that. I mean, I was definitely, you know, wanting to wait because it was fairly new. And I was 17 and devastated. And I went to a party with some friends and two guy friends, and I got really drunk, and they ended up leaving, and I ended up passing out in one of the guys' bedrooms. And I woke up to him having sex with me. And,
Wow.
uh, obviously was confused, embarrassed, still drunk. Um, so I kind of like stopped him, and he did stop. Um, but and then it ended up like one of the roommates, because they were out of high school. I think they were like probably 19 or 20 or something. And then one of his roommates gave me a ride home. And I just remember feeling so much shame about it
Mm-hmm.
because I thought it was my fault. I mean, it never occurred
Got
to
drunk.
me. Yeah, I got drunk,
Right.
and I went into this person's bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it honestly didn't occur to me for years and years and years later that that was not okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was passed out,
Right.
and like I said, I mean, there's all different degrees of it, but consent is consent. And so it's like, everybody like talks about their first or whatever. And, it was always, again, just really shameful for me that I put myself in that position. And I always felt like it was my fault that
Right.
happened. Um, and would have never gone and reported it because it didn't even occur to me at that time. I mean, I wasn't held down. I wasn't, like, I mean, in some of these cases, I mean, these girls are being like, um, physically, held down, and they're fighting, and they're saying
Right.
no and all this kind of stuff. Um, and so what I found interesting in like watching this, and even my own views, having grown up very, in the 80s, in a culture where, I mean, I remember what was the Jodie Foster movie, The Accused or something like that, where she gets raped at a bar, and then I think they're in the
Oh.
the I can't remember at what point. It's been so long since I've watched it, but I just remember them saying like, "Well, you were wearing a short skirt."
Right. I vaguely
Like,
remember that
like
movie.
you're asking for it because of how
But
you're dressing, because
right.
men apparently can't control themselves.
Right.
And so that culture was really prevalent, and it it's it's crazy to me that even I thought for so long, because I'm sorry, I'm kind of going in circles. I thought that when you saw somebody, because in these cases that are in this documentary, the girls are uh why can't words are not coming to me. Fuck. Everyone's like, just spit it out, Jeanna. They're not claiming, they're saying that they're guilty.
Oh,
They take a why am I so
well,
stupid right now?
they end up the
They say you
the
can
police
take,
officers
we'll
end
go
up
easy on you if you just say that you're guilty.
right. The police officers end up putting them in a situation which I can completely relate to this because of not wanting confrontation,
Mm-hmm.
where they're not believing them. And these young girls who have just been traumatized, who thought they were going to do the right thing and, going to an authority figure for help, are now being told, like, we don't believe you. And so they're just kind of agreeing to say, you know, uh huh,
They're
okay,
taking a plea of,
I'm
of
sorry.
guilty.
Yeah. And they're taking the in this documentary, the few girls that are highlighted in it, they take those statements as a confession.
Right. Well, and
And
what was also being shown that I thought was really interesting is how many of because the police are able to lie to them. And so what's happening is like in these interviews, they're telling them like, well, we have video of you getting in the car.
right.
And then what's happening is these poor girls, they're going, wait, what? Like they know that didn't happen,
Mm-hmm.
but this person in authority is telling them that. And then that's when they sort of get them by telling them, by lying to them, basically.
Right.
And then they kind of go, well, okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Because a lot of the girls had said in the documentary, I just wanted to get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Like in their minds, they're like, this guy doesn't believe me. I feel like I'm, the suspect now. I want to get out of here. And then that's when a few of them, the police would call them and say, hey, like, we need you to come down and talk about your case. And then they would go down there and then they would hit him with well, we're going to arrest you for filing a false police report, which has, I'm sure it's maybe different state to state, but I think it could be like a year in jail.
Right.
And so then they'll plead, guilty. But then what I was getting at in my weird way is that when I was younger, I would see something like that because then the news would pick it up, or the sheriff's station themselves would like post on their Facebook, like, this is the picture of this person, release their name because they're no longer a victim, they're a perpetrator. And, smear them all over the place. The news picks it up and now it's showing everybody like they pled guilty to lying. And I was victim of believing that. Like, if somebody's going to plead that they're guilty to that, then they're guilty.
Right. Like, why would they say they're guilty if they're not?
Right. Well, now we know.
Because they're terrified.
Right.
They're young. They don't know what that means. I found it really interesting that not one of them had an attorney present.
Right. Well, because if you think about it, if you're a victim, why would you need an attorney?
Well, that's true.
But
that's why I tell my kids, you never talk to the cops without an attorney. It doesn't matter what it's for.
Right. Right.
It doesn't matter.
But if you've grown up in this culture of, they're there to protect you and you're naive.
Yeah.
And that's why I thought it was so important to kind of bring this up on the podcast, because I think, if there's young people listening, and, this is much more prevalent than people realize, that, to bring up the fact that, the police can lie to you, that you shouldn't talk to somebody without, an attorney present. If you're a kid, an underage, you should have your parent there. And if you're a mom listening to this, or a grandma or anybody, I just think it's so important. And it's not just girls. I mean, this happens to boys also. So I just think it's a really important conversation to have that I never thought to have with my children.
That's interesting that you never thought to have that conversation with your kids. I mean, I know I've
talked about, sexual assault, like things like that, but it never occurred to me to put that sort of thing happened, to get guilty pleas,
that it can go the other direction,
that it can go that direction. And to make them aware of that. I don't know. It's just, it just, I think probably because I thought that anybody that was charged for it and pled guilty was guilty.
Well, I think, oh God, there's so many legs of this.
I know.
I think in a way, those girls thought that they were a little bit kind of similar to what you said, that you put yourself in that situation and felt guilty about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, you know, these girls, because all of the stories that well, all but the one, but most of the stories were college girls or college age girls who were out having drinks, you know, had some guys talking to them, probably felt flattered, were just having a good time. And then they ended up, having too much to drink or their inhibitions were, dulled. And so they left with them,
Right.
thinking that these are nice guys. And I think at that age, there's a lot to be said for like, you know, getting attention
Mm-hmm.
and being flirted with and having guys pay attention to you. I don't think a lot of girls that age realize that it can go south really fast,
Mm-hmm.
especially if, drugs and alcohol are
Right.
involved. And
And not
that,
saying that it's their fault at all.
no, no, no.
No, I
But
know that I know you're not. I'm just saying like it's such a hard thing, right? Because people should be able to, I'm not saying, hey, if you're you should get drunk. I'm not saying that. But you should be able to feel safe if
mm-hmm.
that happens.
Yes.
There should never be a reason. I mean, but it's an unfortunate thing that that's just not the case. But
Right.
saying that, it's well, and I think when you're younger, you think you know everything.
Well, and you think you're invincible.
Yeah,
Like you
you're
never think
invincible.
it's
You're
going
in
to happen to you.
control. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, uh, alcohol does like dull your sense of danger.
Right.
It just
Right.
does. Well, I think that alcohol changes, and drugs change everybody's perception of what's going on. And so when you throw that into the mix, they they don't necessarily think that they're putting themselves into a potentially dangerous situation.
Right.
I mean, I put myself into that same situation not that long ago and dealt with a very similar thing that this documentary touches on. And even as a grown woman in her 40s, hesitated to, you know, say anything or do anything because there is that fear of like, I'm not going to be believed.
Right.
So,
Well, and again, feeling like I put myself in this position. Like you
mm-hmm,
almost have to like talk yourself out of that.
mm-hmm,
It's and then there's the trauma of it, right? So you're not thinking straight anyway.
right. Like the one girl
Um,
said, she like hadn't slept in 4 days, and they
right,
called her back in, and she, was 10,000, you know, which how many? She was far away from home. Her parents weren't
right,
able to be there, so she
right.
was on her own. And yeah, and so I would like to think, and maybe this is just trying to. I don't want this to come across as making an excuse, but I would like to think that it's just a lack of education and a lack of process within the law enforcement community. And
Well, I think it is. I mean, they
and the
even
judicial
interviewed that
system.
one guy that was talking about how they use this one kind of tactic when interrogating somebody.
Mm-hmm. The
And
ruse, how they,
ruse,
well, he
ruse,
called lying to them a ruse.
a ruse, right?
Yes.
This ruse method or something. And I think that's the problem, is that they're not looking at it as that they're a victim. It's kind of like when they come in, it's like they have to prove that this happened to them, first of all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's hard because it's almost like, I feel like the more that they do it, the more that they're like, oh, well, I mean, look at all these guilty people we have. Like, this is way more prevalent than we thought.
Right.
So maybe there's that mentality to it. But yeah, I'm not quite sure. I think that it's, like you said, it's a lack of training, specifically for that, or, for sexual assault victims. But yeah, it was just eye opening for me. And that's why because I almost felt bad myself for just assuming that all these women were out there lying,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
or, and it's kind of like everything else that's happening right now, right? In the media or anything else. It's like you start seeing all these things, of these women that are pleading guilty, pleading guilty, pleading guilty, and more people being charged. And so you start thinking that it's almost like an epidemic of itself,
Mm-hmm.
when it's not. It's so rare that actually happens. And so it's kind of like fucking it up for everybody,
Right.
like those few people that, because of course somebody has lied about something like that.
Right.
But I think, I can't remember what she said at the end of it, but there was something when she was doing this reporting, she thought it was just like these 3 cases, and then it went up to something else. And then it was like, at one point it was like 160
She
or
said
something like
that.
that.
So she worked on this story for 4 years, and she was able to confirm 200 cases
Oh,
within the
that's what it was.
United States of victims who then were turned suspect and charged with filing a false police report. And that is just what she herself uncovered, her
Right.
and her team. Um, but yeah, 4 years, 200 cases is what they found.
Just crazy.
It is. It really is. It would be interesting to see the flip side of that, though, and see how many of those, how many out of the 460,000 sexual assaults that are reported within the US, how many of those are actual false reports,
Sure.
and what percentage of those are actually prosecuted. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
It would be interesting to get like a full, well-rounded picture.
Right.
But
Well, it was interesting too,
one of the
because
stats.
in one of them, oh, sorry, you wanted what?
Oh, I was just going to say one of the statistics that they outlined at the end of the documentary, because they do go through a few statistics. It was 460,000 sexual assaults are reported in the US per year, or occur in the US per year. 30% of those are reported, and only 1% of those are actually prosecuted.
Yeah, that's insane to me.
I know. So where is the system falling short in that, right?
Right.
Is the burden of proof on the victim?
Well, it
I
looks like
think
it.
that it is,
Right.
based on what this documentary is showing.
Well, and I know this is just one case that they highlighted, but there was one where this poor girl, I can't remember which girl it was, but she had gone through hours and hours and hours and hours of interrogation.
Hmm.
Um, and then when they asked the guy about it, it was like he came in with his lawyer. He was there for like an hour or something like that. I mean, just like very minimal. And it was kind of
Hmm.
like, you know, no, I didn't do it. And
Hmm.
then it was like, okay, like that was it.
Yeah.
And even at the end of the documentary, when they were interviewing the one policeman that was talking about this ruse method that he uses,
Hmm.
she had uncovered that in this case that he had done, one of the perpetrators, or one of the suspects, had a sexual assault report before that that he didn't even know about.
Right. Because he never looked into him.
He never looked into it. Yeah.
No.
So it's like you just see stuff like that and you think, what the fuck is going on?
Right.
But yeah, so I highly encourage people to watch it.
I do too, because it's eye-opening and it brings a lot of a lot of different trains of thought and a lot of different conversation topics, to the front of your mind, to where it's like, okay, there's obviously something wrong.
Yeah. Yep. I'm like, where do we go from here?
What are we going to do about it? No, I think just starting the conversation is doing something, right?
But that's what I'm saying. I think that it's important for women to talk to women about it. And the fact that you do see so many women not being believed, it's not going to help to not report it. But I think to advocate for yourself during that, or to have people around you, and again, like having this conversation and seeing kind of the pitfalls of like how the police are dealing with something. So that way, if you find yourself or a loved one or a friend or whoever finds themselves in that position, to try to empower them to, how to go about it.
Right.
So that they don't feel like there's, they're helpless in it.
Right.
Was kind of my thought. So
no, I agree. And
yeah.
I think that, overall the judicial system, from what I've dealt with, and this is this whole separate beast, but I went through a period of time where we were heavily involved in the family court system.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was the burden of proof fell on the victims.
Mm-hmm.
And I was put in the position to have to try and prove that there was harm, happening. And because of the way the system is set up and the lack of education for the family, court attorneys and family court judges on different personality disorders and on different psychiatric diagnoses, they, like I said, the burden of proof fell on me. Right. To prove that that's what was happening. And this kind of brought up a little bit of that same feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like you said, having the conversation and letting the people that you know or that you love, like they're what's the right word? What am I trying to say?
Well, it's almost like you're having to like tell people how to navigate through something like that.
Right.
To know that there are these pitfalls, and not just kind of go into it naively and thinking like, oh, well, this person's going to help me, which is sad that we have to do that. But I'd rather people around me, be empowered to do that rather than go through it blindly.
Right.
So.
And with any kind of large system like that, right? There's laws and there's procedures and there's things in place that are meant to benefit things as a whole. But there's always like special circumstances or different circumstances that it doesn't work for. And in this case, that is one of them where it's not working for the victims,
right,
or the people that need help. I'm trying to choose my words really carefully.
I know. Because sorry, guys, we're kind of stumbling through this because it's so hard because you want to. It's interesting. Until I came like started doing this, I never really thought about what I said before I said it. And it's not because I'm worried about being canceled or anything else. But then again, it's like part of that whole thing of me always like trying to look at things from two sides.
Right.
You know, and like you said, it's like very nuanced, right? So you don't want to say something and then somebody feel like, you know, like me even saying, you know, that I felt shame. I'm not saying you should feel shame. I felt that way, you know, like, and it's not shameful. Right. I didn't do anything wrong, you know, except for drink too much. And that what it ended in should have had nothing to do with, you know, I should have just had to have a really awful hangover and, you know, maybe gotten grounded,
right.
You know, or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, so it is, it's hard because you don't want it to look like we don't believe in our system, or, you know, this country is shit, or, you know, we hate police officers, or we, you know, because even in this documentary, there's this one gentleman that was a ex policeman or retired policeman that, you know, the way that they do things is very different. And he was talking about like education on how to talk to victims and all of that. So I mean, it's definitely not like everybody's bad, or, you know, every experience is not my experience.
Right.
So yeah.
Not making blanket statements here.
Yeah, people. No blanket statements.
We're just talking about little things that add up to maybe, you know, there's a problem.
Yeah. There's a big problem. It's a big problem.
It needs to be addressed.
Yes, it needs to be addressed. But do we know how to fix it? Absolutely not.
No.
No.
But at the end of the documentary, there is a website that is for anybody who feels like they need support, and it's wannatalkaboutit.com. WANNA talkaboutit.com. I haven't looked at it. I don't really know what it consists of, but I imagine it's a resource for people to find, you know, support, local support. Yeah.
Okay, guys. Well,
that's one of the really hard things though right now. I feel like because of everything that's going on, there's so many things that it's like people have very strong opinions on. It's like, this is wrong, this needs to be reformed, this needs to be changed. But when it comes down to your everyday life, it's kind of like, how do you do that?
Right.
And I think this is a fantastic way for us to be able to do that, is just by having a conversation about it. And maybe somebody thinks about it. Maybe somebody has a counter argument, like email us with a counter argument about it. That
right.
We'll listen and, you know, talk about that too.
Yeah. Well, and I don't really feel, I mean, I feel like just by sharing information, you know, and so yeah, we would really encourage you guys to check it out. It's on Netflix. It's called Victim Suspect. A lot of good information in there. And if you guys have any questions or anything, feel free, or something you guys want us to talk about, feel free to email us at betweenthereps@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And we hope you guys have a wonderful day, and we'll be a lot more lighthearted next time.
Yeah. Next time I want to talk about that app.
Yeah, Devon found a really cool app that we're going to talk about next time. More information to share.
And makeup.
Yeah. Light shit. Okay, guys, thank you so much for going on this journey with us today. We appreciate you, love you, and don't forget to
rate, review, subscribe, 5-star rating, 5-star warning.
And we'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Bye, guys.